Welcome back to Griffonomics, where we conduct financial investigations to define the risk before we look at the reward. Today, we're diving into Fractyl Health, Inc., trading under the ticker GUTS.
And we're evaluating a really interesting one today. This is a high-risk, high-reward opportunity in the metabolic health sector.
Specifically, we're looking at a potential solution to the chronic challenges posed by that revolutionary class of GLP-1 drug therapies.
Fractyl is a speculative metabolic therapeutics play, betting its Revita DMR metabolic reset will create the first durable off-ramp from GLP-1 therapy, justifying its valuation against persistent going concern risk and the complex regulatory hurdles of a pre-revenue medical device company.
That thesis statement, I think it just nails the central tension, and it's why this deep dive is so necessary.
It really is. On one hand, you have truly groundbreaking science. I mean, it's aiming to solve what is arguably the defining health crisis of our generation.
And on the other hand, you have a financial clock that is ticking, and it is ticking loudly.
Exactly. The clinical evidence suggests that they might actually have the key, but we need to verify if the company can afford to cross that finish line before the cash, simply runs out.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with Fractyl's core philosophical mission. They aren't just trying to make another pill.
No, not at all. They are not interested in the chronic symptomatic management of type 2 diabetes or obesity. That's the old model.
So the goal is to move beyond simply controlling symptoms toward implementing what they call durable disease-modifying therapies.
Correct. Therapies that target the actual physical root cause of these widespread metabolic illnesses.
The scientific premise is utterly fascinating, and it didn't just come out of a vacuum, right?
No, it was born out of observing bariatric surgery patients. When you perform certain types of weight loss surgeries, specifically the ones that bypass parts of the small intestine, physicians notice something incredible.
Right, that type 2 diabetes would just vanish.
It would reverse itself within hours, not weeks or months, but hours. And that insight shifted the focus away from just calorie restriction and toward the gut itself.
So the focus landed squarely on the duodenal lining.
The mucosa, yes. The inner surface of the first part of the small intestine, right after the stomach. In patients with metabolic disease, the constant chronic exposure to high-fat, high-sugar diets causes a physical pathology.
An overproliferation of this lining.
Exactly. The duodenal mucosa becomes diseased, overgrown, and frankly, hyperactive.
And this diseased mucosa, this overgrowth, it becomes a bad actor in the body's system.
A very bad actor.
Ah.
It begins sending abnormal pathological neural and hormonal signals to the brain and the liver. It's a literal miscommunication between your gut and your core metabolic control centers.
Precisely. And this dysfunction drives the brain to defend a higher weight and blood sugar set point.
And that is the absolute key insight. You, the patient, feel compelled to eat more, and your body actively resists weight loss because its metabolic thermostat is set incorrectly. Maybe it's set at 85 degrees Fahrenheit.
In current medicines, and this includes the amazing GLP-1 drugs, they're fantastic at providing temporary relief.
They are. They're like opening the window or turning on the air conditioning. They adjust the temperature temporarily and suppress symptoms, leading to weight loss. But they don't fix the underlying broken, miscalibrated thermostat.
So the moment you turn off that air conditioning,
The temperature soars right back up.
and that is where the procedural therapy, Revita, comes in. It's designed to physically intervene and reset that thermostat.
Exactly. The concept is that simple and yet profoundly complex in its execution. The goal of the procedure is to use hydrothermal ablation to physically remove or ablate that dysfunctional duodenal lining.
You wipe the slate clean.
You wipe the slate clean, and the body's natural processes take over. The duodenal mucosa regenerates incredibly rapidly. It's one of the fastest regenerating tissues in the body, typically completing the process within 7 to 10 days.
And the new healthy lining is intended to restore normal metabolic signaling and durably reset the body's weight and blood sugar set points.
That's the theory, and the data is starting to prove it out.
This scientific elegance is clear. But the market urgency is, well, it's paramount. We have to talk about the massive challenge driving this valuation, the post-GLP-1 crisis.
All right. These drugs, like Ozempic and Mounjaro, they've revolutionized treatment, but they introduced a massive, painful caveat.
The caveat is adherence and sustainability, and the numbers are they're truly staggering.
They really are. While the drugs are effective when taken, the economic and clinical hurdle is discontinuation. We are seeing rates between 65% and 85% of patients discontinuing chronic GLP-1 therapy within a year or two.
And that rate often rises, right, as patients encounter cost barriers, side effects, or they just get tired of chronic injection schedules.
Absolutely. And that failure point is not just a medical tragedy for the patient, but a massive compounding economic problem for the entire healthcare system. It makes the lifetime value of the drug really questionable for a payer.
And the consequence of stopping is rapid, sometimes traumatic metabolic rebound.
You see patients experience profound, almost overwhelming hunger. It's often described as relentless food noise. This isn't just slight hunger. This is the body's survival mechanism, defending that higher set point we just talked about.
And the clinical data on this is really sobering.
It is. In prior studies, patients typically regained 9% to 10% of their body weight by just 6 months after stopping the medication.
So a significant portion of the weight loss is erased almost instantly.
Gone. That profound, predictable rebound effect is the precise problem Fractyl aims to solve with Revita.
And the regulatory environment validated this market need in a huge way.
It did. The FDA recognized that this unmet need, this durability problem, is so massive and so critical that they granted Revita a breakthrough device designation.
And that designation was specifically for weight maintenance after GLP-1 drug discontinuation in people with obesity.
Which is a tacit acknowledgement by the regulator that the industry needs a viable off-ramp, and it needs one quickly.
Which brings us to the economics. This is not a niche play at all.
No. This is addressing the Achilles heel of what analysts project to be the single largest pharmaceutical market in history.
The market opportunity is solving this post-GLP-1 crisis, which affects a total addressable market, a TAM, that's over $175 billion.
And to grasp the financial anxiety of the payer, the insurance companies, the governments, you have to look at the cost structure. Lifelong GLP-1 spending runs roughly $10,000 to $15,000 per year per patient.
And if you scale that across millions of patients who have to take the drug indefinitely to avoid that rebound,
the cost becomes unsustainable for health systems globally. They are desperately, urgently searching for a durable off-ramp, a one-time intervention that can lock in the metabolic gains without that perpetual annual spending.
and that's the financial engine driving the urgency behind Fractyl's valuation.
Precisely.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the lead asset, or Revita DMR, in detail. You mentioned it's an endoscopic procedure. For the listener, what does this procedure actually entail?
Revita is designed for scalability and integration into existing gastroenterology practices. It's a minimally invasive endoscopic procedure, so no external incisions performed under sedation. It's very similar to a routine colonoscopy or upper endoscopy.
And the physician uses a specialized catheter.
Correct. It's threaded through the endoscope and into the duodenum. Once it's in position, the catheter performs hydrothermal ablation. It uses heated, pressurized fluid to carefully and precisely remove that dysfunctional duodenal lining.
And you mentioned they're targeting a specific length.
Yes, in the pivotal REMAIN-1 study, physicians were ablating an average length of 16 centimeters of the duodenum per procedure. This length metric is important because earlier dose-finding studies suggested a dose-dependent effect.
Meaning you have to ablate a sufficient length of the diseased tissue to get the desired metabolic reset.
That's right.
And why is the safety profile such an enabler for market adoption here?
Safety is paramount. I mean, you are asking a patient who has just achieved success on a drug to undergo a procedure. The profile has to be excellent.
And Revita's safety data is a huge positive.
A massive positive. Through 3 months of the critical REMAIN-1 midpoint cohort, there were no device-related serious adverse events reported whatsoever.
What about side effects?
They were described as mild, self-limited, and transient, often relating to some abdominal discomfort or nausea right after the procedure, which is common with any endoscopy.
So this robust safety profile is a huge market enabler.
Absolutely. It contrasts sharply with the long-term known side effects of chronic GLP-1 use, like chronic nausea, or even the risks of bariatric surgery. This makes the conversation between a physician and patient much easier. We can lock in your results with a safe, one-time endoscopic procedure.
Okay, let's focus on the clinical de-risking event that really changed the investment narrative.
Yeah.
The REMAIN-1 midpoint cohort data. You called it a rigorous stress test.
It was the ultimate stress test for an anti-obesity intervention. It was a randomized, double-blinded, sham-controlled study. 45 patients randomized 2.1, Revita versus sham.
And the rigor was in the preconditioning phase.
Yes. These patients weren't just generally obese, they were specifically preconditioned on tirzepatide, one of the most potent drugs available. until they achieved a mean weight loss of 15% total body weight loss.
So they were already massive successes on the drug.
Huge successes. And crucially, the protocol then mandated that the drug be abruptly discontinued.
Which, when you do that, you create a physiological vacuum. Their body set point is aggressively trying to return to the original weight.
The study design was engineered to create the maximal physiologic drive to regain weight possible. It ensured that if Revita worked, the effect would be absolutely undeniable.
And the efficacy data at 3 months post-discontinuation? Well, it seems Revita did not just stop the rebound.
No, it achieved a measurable continued improvement. The separation between the groups was just profound and statistically significant.
So the sham patients, the ones who got the fake procedure.
They behaved exactly as historical data predicted. They regained 8 kilograms of body weight, which is about 10% of the weight they had lost. This just confirms the severity of that rebound effect.
Okay, but the Revita patients.
The Revita patients, those who received the hydrothermal ablation, not only maintained their loss, but they lost an additional 2 kilograms or 2.5% body weight on top of the initial 15% they had already shed.
Wow, so that's a 10-kilogram absolute difference between the groups.
Which translates to a clinically and statistically meaningful 12.5% treatment difference in just 3 months.
To maintain weight loss achieved on a highly potent GLP-1 after discontinuation, and then to continue losing weight.
It's a result that completely validates the root cause hypothesis. This materially de-risks the pivotal readout that's coming in 2026.
Let's just pause there. A 12.5% treatment difference. In this world, that's almost astonishing.
It is. In the realm of weight maintenance, most interventions, they show marginal separation. We're talking low single digits. Achieving a 12.5% difference in this high-risk population is nearly unprecedented for a non-bariatric surgical intervention.
And it speaks volumes about the potential biological potency of this duodenal reset.
It really does.
Furthermore, this efficacy, it shows signs of durability, which is the entire point. You have historical context from a German registry study.
Right, and that data is crucial for the durability argument. It showed sustained 2-year durability. In that study, patients maintained an average 8.9% total body weight loss and achieved a significant 1.7% reduction in HbA1c, a key marker for diabetes control.
And critically, the study noted.
It noted no waning of effect between 1 year and 2 years. This suggests that the metabolic reset is not some temporary fix, but a durable change in the physiological set point.
Okay, now let's shift to the commercial calculus.
Yeah.
Clinical efficacy alone doesn't guarantee success. The economic value proposition has to be compelling.
And this is where the price structure comes into play. The economics are truly advantageous, and they position Revita as a disruptive alternative to lifetime drug expense, which is the exact pitch payers want to hear.
So what's a projected price?
The projected price of the Revita catheter is conservatively set between $5,000 and $8,000 for the single procedure.
Run the numbers on that for us.
That single procedure cost is equivalent to paying for only about 18 months of GLP-1 drug costs at the current average prices.
So if Revita demonstrates 3 to 5 years of durable effect, the return on investment for the payer is massive.
And immediate. A health plan grappling with paying $10,000 to $15,000 every single year indefinitely for millions of patients suddenly has a highly attractive, one-time capped expense option. This drives the commercial pull.
But let's apply some critical pushback. Medical device adoption is notoriously slow. You need new equipment, physician training, reimbursement codes. Why should investors believe Fractyl's go-to-market strategy will be faster?
They're mitigating several of those risks by leveraging existing infrastructure and partnerships. First, the procedure uses existing GI endoscopy centers. You don't need to build entirely new surgical suites.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, they're using a proven sales model targeting gastroenterologists and bariatric surgeons who are already comfortable with these procedures. And third, they have strategic partnerships, like the non-binding letter of intent with Bariendo, a large nationwide endoscopic obesity care platform.
But the most strategic move is their patient funnel access.
This is the smartest part. They aren't trying to find new patients in the void. There are already an estimated 800,000 patients with obesity who are on a GLP-1 and are scheduled for an endoscopy this year for other medical reasons.
So they're already in the system.
They're pre-screened, already engaged with the GI system, already accepting of an endoscopic procedure, and actively taking drugs they will eventually want to stop. That targetability drastically reduces the cost and time of patient acquisition.
Let's nail down the critical regulatory pathway, because this timeline is the central value driver for the stock in the next 2 years.
The path is accelerated due to the breakthrough designation, which streamlines communications with the FDA. The large, pivotal REMAIN-1 cohort is enrolling 315 patients and, importantly, is randomizing ahead of schedule.
And the next key catalyst.
It's coming relatively soon. The crucial randomized 6-month data from the midpoint cohort expected in Q1 2026. This 6-month data is important because it will show sustained effect and will include ancillary measurements, specifically DXA scans.
Why are those DXA scans so vital?
They are vital because they address the quality of the weight loss. We know that chronic GLP-1 use, while effective, often results in a significant portion of that loss coming from lean muscle mass.
Which isn't ideal.
Not at all. If Revita can shift the body composition profile toward maintaining lean muscle while primarily burning fat mass, a result hinted at in preclinical studies, that data will be gold. The DXA scans provide the quantitative proof.
And following that, the ultimate milestone is the top-line data and the PMA filing.
Exactly. The top-line primary endpoint data from the pivotal cohort and the anticipated PMA filing in the second half of 2026.
So, the science has momentum, and Revita has a clear path to market. But the technology isn't static. We need to talk about the pipeline optionality, specifically their secondary platform, Rejuva gene therapy. This seems like the category-closer vision.
The Rejuva platform is Fractyl's boldest bet. It's aiming for the true one-and-done treatment strategy for metabolic disease. The goal is a potentially curative solution that achieves durable remission of both type 2 diabetes and obesity through a single administration.
If Revita is the off-ramp,
Rejuva is the permanent bridge.
that is an incredibly bold claim for a gene therapy in metabolic health. How does this mechanism actually work?
It's an advanced concept built on biological feedback loops. Rejuva is a one-time AAV pancreatic gene therapy. The elegance is in its targeting. It uses the AAV vector to deliver a genetic payload specifically to the pancreatic beta cells.
The cells that normally produce insulin.
Exactly. The payload programs these cells to become GLP-1 factories, but not just constant factories. They are programmed to secrete natural human GLP-1 only upon nutrient ingestion.
So it's called physiologic pulsatile expression. This avoids the constant high circulating levels of GLP-1 that you get with the injected drugs.
And that distinction is critical.
Explain why. Why is pulsatile better than constant?
Well, constant high levels of synthetic GLP-1 analogs are believed to be responsible for some of the common side effects, like persistent nausea. The body is always sensing the hormone.
Whereas a healthy body releases hormones in bursts.
In controlled pulses, specifically right after a meal when they are needed. Rejuva aims to mimic this natural native biology. By providing the GLP-1 on demand and regulated by the act of eating, it's hypothesized that the therapy will maintain high efficacy while drastically improving the safety and tolerability profile.
And the preclinical potency data for the obesity candidate RJVA-002 was pretty striking.
It was. In a translational obesity model using male mice, a single administration of RJVA-002 showed approximately 30% weight loss over just 5 weeks, with weight loss still ongoing.
And we have to caveat that. Mouse models often show greater efficacy.
Of course. But even accounting for that, a 30% reduction in 5 weeks is an indication of extreme potency. It suggests this mechanism could be significantly more effective than current synthetic drugs over the long term.
But moving a gene therapy from preclinical to the clinic, that has immense technical hurdles.
Absolutely. The challenges are significant, relating to manufacturing, CMC, and the vector itself. And there's always the risk of dose-limiting toxicity in phase 1.
So what are the next steps for clinical entry?
They are advancing quickly. For the type 2 diabetes candidate RJVA-001, the preclinical activities are completed. They submitted the first module of the clinical trial application in May 2025.
And pending regulatory clearance.
Fractyl expects to dose the first patients and report preliminary data in 2026. This will be a major inflection point, determining if their physiologic pulsatile expression theory holds true in humans.
This dual-platform approach is powerful. The near-term device, Revita, and the long-term potentially curative gene therapy, Rejuva. This brings us to the financial infrastructure.
The reality check.
The Q3 2025 results and liquidity. With all this groundbreaking work, investors have to confront the financial reality of a development stage company.
And the reality, as we said in the thesis, is that Fractyl is fundamentally a pre-revenue development stage company. Revenue for T3 2025 and for the 9 months ended September 30, 2025 was $0.
Zero.
And the company has operated at a substantial loss throughout its history, leading to a massive accumulated deficit of $512.5 million as of September 30, 2025. This historical burn rate is the context for all current financial risks.
Okay, let's detail the Q3 financial figures, starting with the headline, net loss, which looked concerning on the surface.
The company reported a net loss of $45.6 million for Q3 2025, but this number requires careful deconstruction.
Right. It was primarily driven by a significant one-time $23.5 million non-cash accounting change related to the fair value of warrants.
Exactly, and you have to explain that. Warrants grant the right to purchase stock at a certain price. Accounting rules require these to be marked to market as a liability.
And since Fractyl's stock price likely increased after the positive data, the value of that liability also increased.
So, ironically, a higher stock price leads to a larger non-cash accounting loss on the income statement. It's a paper loss. Management was clear that this does not reflect a change in underlying operating performance or core cash burn.
And we did see evidence that management was actively working to reduce that core cash burn rate.
They demonstrated strategic operational efficiency. R&D expense decreased year over year to $17.5 million in Q3, and they had already reduced the quarterly burn from $25.4 million in Q1 down to $19.8 million in Q2.
Despite the high accumulated deficit, the positive clinical data allowed Fractyl to significantly strengthen its capitalization.
Absolutely. The clinical success provided the proof of concept to unlock new capital. They completed approximately $83 million in underwritten offerings during Q3 2025.
How far did that financing extend the runway?
With cash and equivalents of about $77.7 million as of September 30, 2025, this financing is expected to fund operations into early 2027.
And that timeline is paramount.
It is, because it covers all the major upcoming pivotal clinical and regulatory milestones we just discussed. It gets them to the finish line of the regulatory process.
But even with the runway into 2027, there is a fundamental and critical risk that management itself explicitly acknowledged. The going concern warning.
This is the core financial risk. A going concern warning is a required statement by auditors and management stating that substantial doubt exists about the company's ability to continue as a going concern for at least 1 year without securing additional financing.
And this is management's own conclusion.
Their own conclusion. And it persists even with $77.7 million in the bank.
Why?
It's tied directly to their history of operating losses and, more specifically, the constraints imposed by their high-cost debt structure, the 2023 notes. These notes have a minimum liquidity covenant, which requires Fractyl to maintain a cash balance of at least $10.0 million. And management projects that, based on their anticipated cash burn, they risk falling below that $10 million minimum by the end of 2026.
Which would be a breach of the debt covenant.
And that triggers the going concern warning. Given that meaningful commercial revenue from Revita is not expected until 2027, the need for more capital in late 2026 remains acutely urgent.
So the market is betting on success in Q1 and H2 of 2026 to unlock that necessary financing.
Exactly. The stock is a pure bet on the science because the financial bridge to commercialization in 2027 is still partially built.
Bringing it all together, we have the remarkable clinical leap versus the financial precipice. This is the ultimate speculative bet right now.
It truly is a study in contrasts. The bull thesis is exceptionally powerful and rests on the biological transformation they appear to have achieved. The Revita clinical success, that astonishing 12.5% treatment difference, materially de-risks the product's efficacy.
And the accelerated PMA timeline to H2 2026 suggests regulatory clarity is just over a year away.
And this is coupled with the Rejuva gene therapy optionality, which offers a potential single administration curative solution. The economics for Revita are undeniable. $5,000 to $8,000 for a single procedure against a lifetime of drug costs. Payers will love this.
But the bear thesis is equally stark and grounded in the cold facts of the balance sheet.
It is. The company faces an accumulated deficit of $512.5 million. And while the cash runway extends into early 2027, management's own assessment acknowledges the going concern risks specifically related to that debt covenant.
Which means they need more capital by late 2026.
Correct. So the stock is currently a bet on regulatory approval and a favorable market reaction that must be priced in well before the anticipated 2027 revenue realization. The dilution risk remains high.
So the final investment case hinges on whether the clinical momentum is strong enough to command the financing needed to survive.
The investment case hinges entirely on whether the compelling clinical data and the advantageous pricing structure will be sufficient to justify the current speculative valuation and attract that necessary follow-on financing. The clinical evidence suggests they have a blockbuster intervention, but the financial risk is equally palpable.
As you consider this investment, here's a final provocative thought. Given that chronic GLP-1 drugs often result in fat loss, but also significant lean muscle mass loss, how much more valuable is a therapy like Revita, which may promote a body composition profile characterized principally by fat mass loss, as hinted by preclinical duodenal bypass data?
And how will the upcoming Q1 2026 DSA scan data from the midpoint cohort validate this specific differentiation, the quality of the weight loss for future investors and payers, potentially making Revita not just an economic off-ramp, but a medically superior one?
Risk defined, portfolio protected.